How's it going, BeamerView fans? Today we're going to be checking out BMW's drive modes. If this is your first time on this YouTube channel, what we do here is showcase the latest BMWs. We also do some really cool tutorials and hidden tips and tricks. So definitely subscribe to the channel if that's what you guys are into. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going over all these really cool drive modes that you see right over here. And today, we are in a 2022 BMW X5, but as you can see, this X5 does have these really cool drive modes, and for this video, we're gonna break these down. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, yes, we do have Sport, Comfort, and Eco Pro, and many of you may have a additional button right over here, which might say Adaptive, and I'll also call out for that one as well. So ladies and gentlemen, by default, our main BMW mode, the standard mode, the most balanced one, is going to be this comfort mode that you see right over here. By default, whenever you start your vehicle, it is always going to be in comfort mode, which in my opinion, 95% of BMW owners are going to be in this mode that you see right over here, comfort. It is truly the most balanced setting for BMWs. It's not too aggressive and not too light, and it's definitely going to be the mode that you're in the majority of the time. But as you can tell, comfort is pretty straightforward. All you need to know about this guy is that it is BMW's standard mode. Moving right along to get a little bit complicated, as you can see, we do have our sport mode right over here. And if I were to go into sport, it will actually bring up this screen that we have right over here. And again, this is iDrive 7. But as you can see, our sport mode actually has 3 different types of sport. So by default, we do have our sport standard. And before we go into plus and individual, let me tell you guys what sport standard is. What going into sport does is a few things. One of the changes that you will see is your speedometer that you see right over here. And if you have the Live Cockpit Pro, which just means that you have a digital speedometer, you're going to see this color change right over here. One of the changes that you will see is if we go from comfort to sport, you will see this gauge turn red. And then right here, if I go back to comfort, pay really close attention to this power meter. Now this is actually not a meter that measures your RPM. This actually shows how much power you're using whenever you're driving your vehicle. So as you can see, 0% is right over here. And then depending on how fast you're going, we have 20%. 40%, 80%, and if you were to push the gas all the way down, your vehicle would go up to 100%. So I'm actually going to go back to sport in a couple seconds, but watch this meter right here change. And not only that, this whole color that we're in right now, this is comfort mode. And now if I go into sport, you can see everything change red. So this meter that we're looking at right here does measure your RPMs. And of course, this pops up whenever you go into sport. But let me tell you some other things that are going on with the car as soon as we go into sport. So ladies and gentlemen, one of the really cool things that happens is the fact that your steering wheel now will become much more stiff and much more responsive. Your accelerator pedal as well will become much more sensitive, and also the suspension within the vehicle does become a bit more stiff, so then whenever you're going around corners really hard, your vehicle will stay nice and planted. And also last but not least, your engine will also operate at a higher RPM. So ladies and gentlemen, that is what sport standard does. Now if we actually go back into sport, as you can see right here, we also see Sport Plus. Now, you're probably questioning what Sport Plus is. And personally speaking, when I like to go fast, I personally love to be in Sport Plus. Now, what Sport Plus actually does is that it does reduce the traction just a little bit. It won't turn it off completely, but for some vehicles, it's up to about 25% less. So if you do have a really fast car, such as the BMW M340, if you were in Sport Plus and if you took a turn really hard with the gas all the way down, you could potentially get your car completely sideways, which some people love that, and some other people would be absolutely scared about that. One of the big warnings that I will say though is that if it's raining, Sport Plus is going to be the last mode that you really want to be in. It does reduce the traction by just a little bit, so definitely watch out for that. But yeah, some cool changes that happen in Sport Plus is that you will notice the sound of the vehicle become a bit more deeper, and then on top of that as well, your engine RPMs will work at a more aggressive rotation, and overall just make the car even more sporty. Sport Plus is actually a great mode to be in if you are someone who likes to track your vehicle. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, Sport Plus is basically just sport standard, but much more aggressive. Now lastly, we do have Sport Individual, and if you guys were wondering on how I'm switching these different modes, all that I'm doing is hitting the sport mode that you see right over here multiple times. So if I hit it, it'll just cycle through the different sport modes as you can see. And the third and last sport mode that you see right over here is Sport Individual. Now you're probably wondering what Sport Individual is. If I were to go into configure Individual right over here, As you can see, what Sport Individual is the fact that you can tailor sport mode to your liking. Now, say for example, yes, I do love sport, but one of the things that I don't like about being in sport mode is the feel of the steering. I am also not a fan of the steering feel whenever you're in sport. I personally feel that it's too stiff. So if I were to change my settings within Sport Individual, this would be one of the ones that I would change. So I'm just going to put the steering in sport to comfort. Now, what this will do is, yes, your car will still be in sport, your engine will still feel sporty as well, along with your transmission, but your steering will just feel the same way as if it was in comfort mode. So you basically get the best of both worlds. Now, one of the key things to mention, and I'm going to hit back on the controller right down here to bring us back to this screen. If you do decide to be in your Sport Individual mode, definitely make sure that Individual is selected. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was a quick detail run on what sport does and the different types of sport modes that BMW have. And then going right down to where it says Eco Pro. Now, if you're wondering what Eco Pro does, one of the key changes that you will see is a screen that will now change blue. So we're in sport right now, but I'm gonna hit Eco Pro and now watch the screen turn blue. Our tach meter that used to be right over here now converted into a MPG meter. And if you're checking out the 6.2, that is the average of your MPG. And right down here, if we were to go into brake, this little battery and the line that you see right here is basically how aggressive the car is doing brake regeneration. Also, if you look on the left side right over here, we do have a blue strip that stops at the 80 miles per hour. What that is telling you is that if you do want to be the most efficient with your vehicle, definitely just stay below 80 miles per hour. We do have two different modes for that. We have Eco Pro Standard, but now we also have Eco Pro Individual as well. Now, if we go into Configure Individual right over here, you can see the different types of ways that you can customize your Eco Pro. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we go into this menu right over here, let me give you guys a brief overview on what Eco Pro does. What Eco Pro is designed to do is to maximize your fuel efficiency. So a couple different ways that Eco Pro would go ahead and do that is that it'll make your gas pedal or accelerator pedal a lot less sensitive in order to keep your engine RPMs down very low to a point where it is efficient as possible. Also, if your vehicle has the auto start stop at the red lights where the engine turns off to save gas, your BMW will go ahead and enable that as well to save even more gas. Also, if we're checking out the climate that you see right over here, if you're in Eco Pro, it'll also control the amount of air that's blowing through here and keep the air flowing as efficiently as possible as well. Because if you guys didn't know, depending on how aggressively your BMW is using the climate settings, Eco Pro will actually help control that far more to a point where it will help improve your fuel efficiency. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best times to use Eco Pro is whenever your vehicle is coasting a whole lot. So to give you an example of when your vehicle might be coasting a whole lot is, say for example, if you're driving through the suburbs and you might be hitting some hills and dips, your vehicle, if it's an Eco Pro, will become super efficient in scenarios just like that. Now, you're probably wondering if you should use Eco Pro while you're on the highway. Well, the fact is, yes, you can, but you're probably better off just being in comfort, because Eco Pro works the best when, as mentioned before, your vehicle is coasting a whole lot. You can also use Eco Pro if you're going on a long trip, because usually whenever we're going on long trips, we definitely try to maximize our fuel. So for long trips, I would highly recommend doing Eco Pro. One of the other times I love to use Eco Pro is when I know that my gas is very low. As you can see right now, the gas is very low. I can only travel up to 42 miles. I will use Eco Pro to maximize that fuel efficiency as well. Now, I did forget to mention it before, but some scenarios where you might want to use sport is basically whenever you're ready for some aggressive driving. But some of the scenarios where I do like to use it is if I'm going really aggressive on the highway. But for some more practical reasons, if I'm driving through the city, I would always use sport, because as you're driving within the city, it does involve some really aggressive driving. So I would highly recommend using sport while you're driving in the city, just to have that extra bit of responsiveness. And also another example of where I love to use sport is if I'm urgently trying to get to a destination. Say for example, if I'm running late to work, I most likely will use sport, because quite obviously I'm trying to actually get to work as quick as I can and not get fired. Now, going back down right over here, now we'll come back to HDC, which again does stand for Hill Descent Control. Many people might see a switch right over here that says adaptive. Now, many people always ask what adaptive means, and what adaptive does is basically learn the way you drive, and then features such as your steering wheel feel and your engine speed and your suspension too will basically cater to your driving style. You'll most likely feel the vehicle become a bit more aggressive. So that is what adaptive would do. Now, A scenario where I would love to use adaptive is, again, if I'm doing some mixed condition driving, where there might be some instances where I might have to go really fast, but also there might be some scenarios where I might have to drive very, very slow. Now, going back to right over here, hill descent control. But for this brand new BMW X5, they did change the button style to HDC, which stands for hill descent control. Now, if you're wondering what hill descent control does, let's just say, for example, if the hill had some ice on it and then you literally just want to go very, very slow to a point where the car does not speed up all by itself, hill descent control is very, very useful for scenarios just like that, just to make sure that your vehicle is going at a nice controlled pace. So, ladies and gentlemen, those were the different drive modes that BMWs have, and this was a quick overview on what they do. If you guys still have questions or are still confused about the drive modes, definitely shoot down your question right down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But yes, everyone, definitely make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys for the next one.